Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cozy English Corner, where learning English is easy, cozy, and fun. I'm Mia.
And I'm Jack. We're really happy you're spending part of your day with us.
Jack, can I ask you something?
Go ahead.
Have you ever promised yourself, this Monday will be different?
Only about 100 times.
Really?
Actually, let me tell you something a little embarrassing. A few years ago, I bought a beautiful notebook. I told myself it was going to change my life.
A notebook? Now I'm curious.
It wasn't just any notebook. It was one of those expensive ones. Nice paper, hardcover, very professional. I thought, this is it. This is the notebook where my new life begins.
That sounds promising. What did you write inside?
On the first page, I wrote a plan. Wake up at 7, go to the gym, practice English every day, read 20 pages before bed, spend less time on my phone. The whole list looked perfect.
And Monday?
Monday was less perfect. I hit the snooze button, skipped the gym, practiced English for about 5 minutes, then somehow spent 40 minutes watching videos online.
I think a lot of people know that feeling.
Here's the funny part. The next Sunday, I opened the same notebook. I made another beautiful plan, almost exactly the same one. Then the next Sunday, I did it again.
Seriously?
I still have that notebook. The first few pages all say things like, "This week will be different. This time I'll stick to the plan. Tomorrow is a fresh start." Looking back, it's almost funny.
But I don't think you're the only one. I think almost everyone has their own version of that notebook. Maybe it's a diary, a to-do list, a fitness app, a language learning app, or simply promises we make to ourselves.
Exactly. And that's what makes today's topic so interesting. Most people don't want to stay stuck. They genuinely want to change. They want to become healthier, more confident, better at English, more organized. So why doesn't it happen?
That's the question, isn't it? If we know what we want, and often even know what we should do, why do we keep doing the opposite?
Is it because we're lazy? Not disciplined enough? Or is something else happening beneath the surface?
That's exactly what we're going to explore today. Because I have a feeling the answer is much more interesting and much more hopeful than most people think.
So, if you've ever said, "I'll start tomorrow," or "next week will be different," this conversation is for you. Let's find out why so many good intentions never become real change.
You know, I've thought about that notebook a lot over the years. At first, I blamed myself. I thought, maybe I'm just not disciplined enough.
Do you still believe that?
No. Because then I started looking around, and I realized something. Almost everyone has the same problem. People know they should exercise. They know they should sleep more, practice English, spend less time on their phones, save money, eat healthier. The information isn't a secret anymore.
That's true. We've never had so much advice. Books, podcasts, videos, apps, courses. Sometimes it feels like the whole internet is trying to help us improve our lives.
Exactly. So if information were enough, we'd all be living our dream lives by now.
Which tells us something interesting. Maybe knowledge isn't the real problem.
Then what is?
I think there's something invisible that appears whenever we try to change. Something that quietly pulls us back towards what's familiar.
That reminds me of a word I heard recently. Resistance.
I like that word. Resistance is that little voice inside your head that says, maybe tomorrow, or today isn't the right day, or you'll have more energy next week.
Mine is very polite. It never says, "Don't do it." It says, "Of course you should do it, just not right now."
Exactly. That's why resistance is so difficult to notice. It sounds reasonable. It doesn't argue with your goals. It simply delays them.
That's so true. When I looked at my notebook every Sunday, I wasn't giving up. I still wanted to change. I just kept believing that my future self would somehow be more motivated than I was.
We all seem to believe in that magical future version of ourselves. The one who wakes up early without complaining, never checks social media, and always makes healthy choices.
I'd really like to meet that version of me someday.
Me too. But here's the problem. Tomorrow eventually becomes today. And today's version of us feels exactly the same as yesterday's.
So maybe staying stuck isn't about being lazy. Maybe it's about listening to resistance without realizing it.
I think so. And resistance usually appears when we're about to do something meaningful. Speaking English for the first time, going to the gym, starting a new project, applying for a different job. Those moments often feel uncomfortable.
Which is strange, because those are exactly the things that could improve our lives.
Yes, sometimes we think we're avoiding difficulty, but we're actually avoiding growth.
That makes me wonder about something. If resistance is so normal, why do some people manage to move forward anyway? What's the difference between someone who keeps waiting and someone who finally takes that first step?
Most people think the answer is confidence. They imagine successful people wake up feeling motivated every morning.
I used to believe that. I thought, one day I'll finally feel ready. Then everything will become easier.
Did that day ever come?
No. And that's probably the biggest surprise. I realized that people usually don't act because they feel confident. They become confident because they act.
That's a huge difference. We often think confidence comes first, when actually, it comes later.
Think about learning English. The first conversation feels uncomfortable. The second one feels a little easier. After 20 conversations, you suddenly realize, I'm much more confident now.
Not because confidence magically appeared, but because you kept speaking.
Exactly. Action came first. Confidence followed.
I think the same thing happens with almost everything. Going to the gym, starting a business, learning to drive, meeting new people. Nobody begins as an expert.
Imagine waiting until you feel completely confident before speaking English. You might be waiting for a very long time.
Maybe forever.
Which makes me think about another expression, comfort zone.
That's a great one. Your comfort zone is the place where everything feels familiar and safe. There's nothing wrong with having a comfort zone. The problem is expecting yourself to grow while never leaving it.
That's interesting. Sometimes people think the comfort zone is a happy place, but it isn't always. Sometimes it's simply a familiar place.
Exactly. Someone might stay in a job they don't enjoy, or avoid speaking English, not because they're happy, but because it feels predictable. And predictable feels safe.
So maybe people don't stay stuck because they love where they are. They stay because the next step feels uncertain.
I think that's true. Our brains often prefer familiar discomfort over unfamiliar possibility.
That's such a strange idea. Choosing discomfort because it's familiar.
It sounds strange, but I think we've all done it.
So what's the answer? If taking a huge leap feels scary, what should we do instead?
Maybe we shouldn't think about huge leaps at all. Maybe we should think about tiny steps.
Why tiny?
Because tiny steps are much less frightening. Running a marathon sounds impossible. Walking for 10 minutes sounds possible. Speaking English fluently feels overwhelming. Speaking for 5 minutes feels manageable. Cleaning the whole house feels exhausting. Putting away one shelf doesn't.
That makes sense. And once you've taken that first small step, taking the second one feels easier.
Exactly. There's another useful word for that. Momentum.
I like that word. Momentum is what happens when something is already moving. The beginning is usually the hardest part. But once you're moving, continuing often becomes much easier.
Just like riding a bicycle. The first push takes the most effort. After that, the wheels help carry you forward.
Maybe that's what I got wrong with my notebook. Every Monday, I tried to change my whole life, when maybe I only needed to take one small step.
I think that's a much kinder way to think about change. Not how can I transform my life today, but what's one small step I can take today?
And somehow, that question feels much easier to answer. There's something else I've noticed. The way we talk to ourselves really matters.
What do you mean?
Think about the things people say. I'm just bad at languages. I've never been disciplined. I'm not the kind of person who exercises. I always give up. Sometimes we repeat those sentences for years.
And after hearing them often enough, they stop sounding like opinions. They start sounding like facts.
Exactly. I used to tell myself, I'm terrible at keeping good habits. After a while, I didn't even question it anymore. I simply believed it.
That's something psychologists talk about quite a lot. The stories we repeat become the stories we live.
So maybe staying stuck isn't only about our habits. Maybe it's also about the story we tell ourselves.
I think that's a big part of it. And there's a useful word here: mindset.
I hear that word all the time. What exactly is a mindset?
A mindset is simply the way you think about yourself and the world around you. It shapes how you react to challenges. For example, if someone believes, I'm bad at English, they'll probably avoid speaking. But if they think, I'm still learning English, they'll be much more willing to practice.
So the situation hasn't changed. Only the mindset has.
Exactly. And sometimes that changes everything.
That reminds me of something I did with my notebook. Instead of writing, go to the gym every day, I started writing, become someone who takes care of his health. It felt different, less like a task and more like the kind of person I wanted to become.
I really like that, because lasting change often starts with identity. Instead of asking, what should I do? We begin asking, who do I want to become?
That's a much bigger question.
It is, and interestingly, small actions begin answering that question. Every time you practice English, you're becoming someone who learns consistently. Every time you go for a walk, you're becoming someone who looks after their health.
Even if it's only 10 minutes.
Exactly. Small actions may look unimportant, but repeated often enough, they slowly become part of your identity.
Which brings us to another word I really like, consistency.
Me too. People often think success comes from doing something amazing once, but more often, it comes from doing something ordinary many times. That's consistency, showing up again and again and again.
It's not a very exciting word.
No, nobody posts a photo saying, I studied English for the 143rd day in a row.
That probably wouldn't go viral.
Probably not. But those quiet days are often the ones that matter most, because consistency creates progress that we don't notice immediately.
That's true. When I look back now, I don't remember one magical day when everything changed. It was dozens of ordinary days. One workout, one English lesson, one better choice, then another, and another.
Maybe that's the biggest surprise. Real change usually isn't dramatic. It's surprisingly ordinary.
And maybe that's good news, because if change is built from ordinary days, then all of us can begin, even today, even with one small step.
Exactly. So maybe the real question isn't, how do I change my whole life? Maybe it's much simpler than that. What's one small action you can repeat tomorrow? And the day after that? Because that's where real change quietly begins.
When we started today's conversation, I kept thinking about that notebook. For a long time, I believed the notebook was the problem. Then I thought I was the problem. Now, I don't think either of those things was true.
So what was the real problem?
I was trying to change everything at once. Every Monday had to be the beginning of a completely new life. Wake up earlier, exercise every day, read more, spend less time on my phone, practice English, eat healthier. I gave myself 10 goals, and then wondered why I couldn't keep them all.
That's a lot of pressure for one Monday.
Exactly. No wonder I felt overwhelmed.
I think many people do the same thing. We expect huge changes from one decision, but real life usually doesn't work like that.
No. Looking back, I didn't need a perfect Monday. I needed one small win. Just one.
What would that look like?
Maybe instead of planning an hour of English, I could practice for 10 minutes. Instead of promising to read a whole book, I could read 2 pages. Instead of changing my entire routine, I could simply go for a short walk. Those things sound almost too small.
Sometimes that's exactly why they work. They're small enough to begin, and beginning is often the hardest part.
I also realized something else.
Every time I completed one small action, I felt a little different. Not because I'd transformed my life, but because I'd kept a promise to myself.
I love that. Keeping promises to yourself builds trust. And when you trust yourself, taking the next step becomes easier.
Exactly. That's something my notebook never taught me. I kept making bigger promises when I actually needed smaller ones.
So maybe if someone listening today feels stuck, the answer isn't, how can I completely change my life? Maybe it's, what's one promise I know I can keep today?
I like that question much better. Because almost everyone can do something. 5 minutes of practice, one healthy meal, one difficult conversation, one page, one walk, one email you've been avoiding.
Those actions might seem ordinary, but ordinary actions, repeated over time, become extraordinary results. Not overnight, not in one dramatic moment, little by little.
You know, I still have that notebook. I haven't thrown it away. Sometimes I open it and smile. Not because those old plans failed, but because they remind me how much I've learned. These days, my plans are much shorter, much simpler. And strangely, I accomplish far more.
Maybe that's today's biggest lesson. People rarely stay stuck because they don't know enough. They stay stuck because they're waiting for the perfect moment, or trying to change everything at once.
Real change begins much more quietly, with one decision, one small action, then another. And before you realize it, you're no longer standing where you used to be.
Before we finish today's episode, let's revisit some of the useful vocabulary we've explored together.
My favorite part.
I know. And today's words are all connected to growth and positive change. Let's begin. Our first word is resistance.
We talked about resistance near the beginning of today's conversation.
That's right. Resistance is the invisible feeling that tries to stop us from doing something meaningful. It often sounds like, maybe tomorrow, or I'll wait until I feel ready. For example, I wanted to study English, but I felt a lot of resistance.
I think everyone experiences resistance. The important thing is not letting it make every decision for us.
Next is comfort zone.
I really like this expression.
Your comfort zone is the place where things feel familiar and safe. The challenge is that real growth usually happens just outside it. For example, joining the conversation pushed me out of my comfort zone.
Leaving your comfort zone isn't always enjoyable, but it's often where the best learning happens.
Our third word is momentum.
That's one of my favorites.
Momentum is the energy that helps something continue moving once it has already started. Think about pushing a bicycle. The first push is difficult. After that, it becomes much easier to keep moving. For example, after studying every day for a week, I finally built some momentum.
That's why tiny steps matter. Sometimes they don't change your life immediately. They simply create momentum.
Next is mindset.
We said your mindset shapes the way you see yourself.
Exactly. A mindset is your way of thinking about yourself, other people, and the world around you. For example, changing my mindset helped me stop being afraid of making mistakes.
Sometimes changing your mindset changes your actions. And sometimes your actions slowly change your mindset. I think both are true.
And our final word is consistency.
Probably the least exciting word, and maybe the most important one.
I couldn't agree more. Consistency means doing something regularly over time. Not perfectly, just regularly. For example, her English improved because of consistency, not because of talent.
I think that's my biggest lesson from today's conversation. Small actions don't change your life because they're dramatic. They change it because they're consistent.
Let's do a quick review.
Resistance, that invisible force that tells us to wait.
Exactly.
Comfort zone, the place that feels familiar and safe.
Perfect.
Momentum, the energy that helps us keep moving once we've started.
That's right.
Mindset, the way we think about ourselves and the world.
Exactly.
And finally, consistency, doing something regularly over time.
Wonderful. If you remember just those 5 words, you'll have learned some very useful English today.
Before we go, here's one final question. What's one small step you can take today? Not tomorrow, not next Monday, today. Maybe it's 5 minutes of English, a short walk, reading one page, sending one email. Whatever it is, make it small enough that you can actually do it.
Because real change rarely begins with one huge decision. It begins with one small action, followed by another, and another.
And maybe one day you'll look back, just like I looked back at my notebook, and realize you aren't the same person anymore. Not because your life changed overnight, but because you kept moving forward.
Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Cozy English Corner, and tell us in the comments, what's one small step you're going to take today?
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and remember, small steps really do matter.
Take care and stay cozy.